Prohibition. Overall, you know what it is. Overall, you know how it played out. But do you know about the rise and the fall of Prohibition on Delmarva specifically? Well, this man does. We are happy to welcome back to Delmarva Life in Historic Studio D, Historian Mike Dixon. How are you, sir?
Thanks. I'm fine, Jimmy.
So, Prohibition, it seemed like a pretty much cut and dried story, kinda, but not necessarily the case here on Delmarva.
It really is not the case. You see, there were groups like the Women's Christian Temperance Union, and they had been pushing all over Delmarva and very active with our Methodism and things like that. They had been pushing for temperance, maybe prohibition, for centuries. And they began having some success. But for instance, Delaware wasn't ready for statewide prohibition. We certainly weren't ready for federal prohibition. So Delaware legislature said, you can go to local option. So they would let places like, Milford or Seaford, they could vote to prohibit drinks. So they began this little experiment, trying it out. It didn't work too well, because when you banned alcohol in, say, Milford or Seaford or someplace like that, you know what they did, Jimmy? The town line wasn't that far away. Eventually, they enlarged it. They made it all of Sussex County. They said over in Federalsburg, when the afternoon train would come in from Baltimore, there were dozens of people from Seaford waiting for the train to come in so they could buy their rum, their hard drink, and take it back into the first state. They said it was so rowdy they actually had to triple the size of the police department, and it would take them to midnight sometimes to get order out of control. Well, regionalization isn't going to work.
Right.
So 1920. We go to federal prohibition. Now it's the law of the land. It applies to Delaware, it applies to Maryland, it applies to the entire country. It still didn't work too well. In fact, we're only going to do this for about 14 years. It's going to have, and Delaware and coastal Maryland were so full of leaks. You know how easy it was to pull up on a dark, moonless night along the coast here somewhere off of Ocean City. So mostly, I don't think people ever wanted for drink on Delmarva, okay?
Okay. So
the feds brought in a special agent. They called him Three-Gun Wilson, because Delaware was such a problem. And he was like a really good prohibition federal revenuer. And they brought him to clean up the state. And he worked here for a couple of years. And best I can see, Jim, is he locked up too many politicians. So they found a special assignment for him. They got him transferred to Kansas. So it was going to come to an end. And people like the DuPont family and the country recognizes it's just not a doable sort of thing.
Right. Well, do you think there were a lot of moonshiners around here at the time?
Yeah, let me give you a quote. One of the Sussex County papers said in the first months of Prohibition, 1920, said, you didn't need the moon to travel in Sussex County at night. All you had to look off in the woods, and you could travel easily along the roads and countryside by the stills off in the woods, providing reflections.
Oh my goodness.
There were a lot.
There was a lot going on.
A lot.
So do you think that any of Delaware or Maryland or that area pushed hard to get Prohibition repealed?
Oh, yes, yeah. People were ready to get rid of it. The Great Depression had come. Got Franklin Delano Roosevelt in the White House. But a tax on it's a really good thing. We could use some jobs. There were great jobs in the distilleries and distributors. So yeah, there were a lot. DuPonts were very much behind getting rid of this.
So then it eventually went away, and things smoothed out then, I guess, legally as far as...
For 14 years it lasted. And they decided this is a mistake. This was not a good idea. So we'll repeal Prohibition. And we're in the middle of the Great Depression. FDR said, it's going to be a time for a good drink after the economic trouble that we're in.
So Delmarva had a part in that, something to do with it.
Had a lot to do with it, yeah.
There we go. Historian Mike Dixon, thank you again for sharing your stories with us this afternoon.
My pleasure. Thank you.